Namaste. I'm Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhavanani from Pondicherry, India, and I am pleased to be with all of you in this grand celebration of the Global Yoga Therapy Day, being celebrated in more than 33 countries around this planet. Yoga and yoga therapy have so much to offer our modern humankind. Yoga is the ancient message given by the great seers, those great rishis, who realized that we need to move from dukkha, suffering, to sukha, a state of ease. Today, I'm going to be talking about the topic salutogenesis and yoga therapy. The word salutogenesis comes from Greek and Latin. Salutare from Latin, which means health, and genesis from Greek, which means to give birth. The Sanskrit word jananam is the equivalent of genesis. What are the factors that enable us to manifest health and wellness? What are the factors that enable us to regain it if we have lost it? And if we already have it, how can we maintain it, sustain it, and enhance it? The term salutogenesis is only a couple of decades old, and Antonovsky, who coined it, was giving a modern tinge to ancient wisdom. Old wine in a new bottle, sort of. The ancient Indian systems of health have looked at health as not just something defined by the absence of disease, but as something that is a manifestation of the self. We have a beautiful word in Sanskrit, swasth. And the word swasth implies that we as the self, the swa, are established astu in our own self. When we are established in our own self, we are in a state of health and wellness. It's a state of purnam, a state of completeness, wholesomeness. And that swasth has been defined a couple of thousand years ago by Acharya Shushruth, who was the father of surgery. And he has defined that swasth as samadosha, sama agnischa, samadhatu malakriya, prasanna atma indriya mana, swasth ityabhidiyate. When there is a balanced state and state of equilibrium, sama dosha, sama agni, sama dhatu. When our doshas, when our dhatus and agnis are in sama, in modern terms we would call it homeostatic equilibrium. The milieu interior being maintained with a dynamic stability. And prasanna atma indriya mana, we need to have a tranquil clarity of the atma, of the self, indriya, the senses, and mana, all the components of the mind. It is a utopian type of concept of health, no doubt, but we as yoga therapists must never forget to see the bigger picture. People often miss the woods for the trees, and we must not make that mistake. Too many systems have made that mistake, and in yoga therapy, we need to look at the complete human being. So when talking about this concept of salutogenesis, what we need to understand is that at the heart of salutogenesis lies the concept of sense of coherence, SOC. We in medical line, we always like to have the short forms for everything so that we appear to be more intelligent than we are. So you can go around telling people, what about your SOC? And they have no idea what you're talking about. It's just sense of coherence, where we have a sense of coherence about our life. Now, often we find a sense of incoherence or discoherence when people are faced with bad news. When suddenly someone is diagnosed with AIDS, When suddenly somebody is diagnosed with cancer, someone is given a couple of months to live, you find that sense of discordance or incoherence, you find that manifesting. And we are more commonly seeing that in hospitals and the so-called health system, which I must remind you focuses on disease with its pathogenesis and not salutogenesis. This sense of coherence is very vital, and Antonovsky has given three components. The first component is that we have a sense my world is understandable. It is the cognitive aspect. It is about comprehensible. My world is understandable. I can understand what is happening in my world. It's so important because most of the time people have no clue what is happening to them or in the world around them. So the first component of this sense of coherence is my world is understandable. The second component is my world is manageable. It is the coping skill. Again, we find people, the moment there is a challenge, they get all scared and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to manage it. And this sense of I cannot understand my world, I cannot manage it, triggers the stress response. The third part is my world has meaning. It is about being meaningful, and it is the motivation. So the three components of this sense of coherence include my world is understandable, my world is manageable, and my world has meaning. Now think about this. The cognitive skill, the coping skill, and the motivation. These are three things that are not being addressed in the present day medical community and the healthcare systems. This is where when we bring yoga and yoga therapy, more specifically, into the healthcare system, we are again bringing back the glorious days when medicine was an art. Medicine was an art with a heart. It became a science with a brain. And then now it is primarily a business with a big wallet. We need to move away from that, go back to the glorious golden days where the concept of medicine was an art, that you heal the person through the interpersonal relationship. You are not just treating somebody, but you are helping them heal by them being more of themselves. And how can you help others be themselves if you are not yourself in the first place? And this is why we need to make sure that we are at all times who we are. We need to be who we are. We are a human being. We must not forget that. Be human at all times. And this is so important because people have a loss of it. They have this loss of the sense of coherence, which is where salutogenesis goes into pathogenesis, and then the psychic, psychosomatic, somatic, and organic stages of disease, all of them start to manifest. And no one has a clue what is happening. Now, if we can have that sense of coherence, my life is understandable, my world is understandable, my world is manageable, and my world has meaning. Now, how does yoga therapy work on this? Well, yoga therapy is not just about giving one asana or one pranayama to an individual. It is about assessing the individual. What guna is predominating? What dosha is predominating? Where are they in the mind? What type of attachments do they have? Have they been a victim of the kleshas, the psychological afflictions that distort our perception? And this is where one of the key elements as a yoga therapist is to remember that it is not prescription yoga therapy. It is not, these are the 5 practices for diabetes, these are the 5 practices for hypertension. That becomes a pathogenic yogopathy approach. And we want to have a yoga chikitsa, a yoga therapy approach, where we need to understand that the person has to be helped to have a sense of coherence. So yogic counseling plays a very important role. Swadhyaya, self-introspectional analysis starts to come in, helping the person understand their life better. How can you do that? By listening to them. A caring ear is very, very important. And as a yoga therapist, we need to learn the skill of active listening. We need to listen to the patient. We need to listen to the client, our participant in the sessions, and try to let them talk. Because when they talk about the problem, more often than not, they will find the solution themselves. And this is where helping them to find what the world is, where their place in the world is. This is the concept of Swadharma according to the Bhagavad Gita. Swadharma according to the Bhagavad Gita is our purpose in this lifetime. Helping that person find a purpose in their life. And this is where the yogic concepts that come from the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga Vashishta, and the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which gives us the Yoga Darshana, are so essential if we want to develop a sense of coherence. We need to interact with the person as an individual, respect the individual as they are, help them understand where they are and where they can be, and help them how they can move from where they are to where they can be, from what they are to what they can be, manifesting the potential. Swami Vivekananda so beautifully said something that is in all the ancient Vedas. Every soul is potentially divine. Every one of us is a diamond in the making. And this is where we need to understand that the stress that comes in from a loss of a sense of coherence or the manifestation of discoherence or incoherence, that is where the stress comes in, the adi, that then becomes the vyadi, the disease. So unless we help the person look at their own life, as my father would say, yoga is fourfold awareness. Awareness of the body, awareness of the emotions, awareness of the mind, and awareness of awareness itself. And as my mother Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani added, she said, first we have to be aware of how unaware we are in the first place. So often when people come to yoga and yoga therapy, they are not aware of their own body. They may not be aware of the niggling pains and aches that are there. And then they start the yoga practice and suddenly they say, I have a neck pain, my back hurts, I feel giddy, I feel sad, I feel emotional. And then you know what they say? It's all your fault because yoga, when I did yoga, I got this problem. And then people will write articles and books and reviews about how yoga is so dangerous because of yoga injuries. We need to understand, is it a yoga injury or is it just a manifestation of something that they were not aware of? Subconscious traumas, unconscious traumas that have been hidden under the surface. And when you start to work with them in yoga and yoga therapy, that they start to manifest. And we need to understand it, because if we get scared and, oh my God, you have pain there, oh stop. What has happened is we have blocked the opportunity for a trauma to be released. We need to understand ourselves. We need to look at the bigger picture, and we need to talk to the person. We need to take detailed history, who they are, what the family is like, what their childhood was like. Because so many traumas, we all have those traumas, and in the name of being, nice in society, we have pushed it all under the carpet and keeps on getting pushed under the carpet again and again and again until one day we have a flying carpet of troubles. Coming back to salutogenesis and yoga therapy. When we look at salutogenesis, we are looking at something that is different than the pathogenic approach. Salutogenesis is looking at health. Pathogenesis is looking at disease. Salutogenesis looks at manifesting the potential of that individual, while pathogenesis is just looking at avoiding the problems. Salutogenesis is proactive, and we want to have the presence, the manifestation of health, whereas pathogenesis is reactive and based on the absence of disease. Gain and growth, making your life more meaningful, having a purpose in life is a salutogenic approach. And that is why the philosophy of yoga, the teachings of yoga must be brought into our therapy Therapy in yoga is not just asana, pranayama, mudra, and relaxation. Therapy includes all the philosophical, psychological, metaphysical, spiritual concepts that are there in yoga. For that, we as a therapist must first be aware of it. We need to dwell into the amazing teachings of Yoga Vashishta, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Yoga Sutras at least, and not just restrict ourselves to knowing something about body anatomy and what muscle is used in which asana. It is nice to have that, but the core of yoga therapy, if it is to be yoga therapy and have the yoga in it, is based on the philosophy, the psychology, and the spirituality of the teachings. Recently I had someone ask me, they said, you mean spirituality is within the scope of practice of yoga therapy? And I didn't know what to say. I was at a loss of words, something that doesn't happen most of the time. That someone was wondering whether spirituality is within the scope of yoga therapy. It is. Philosophy, psychology, and the spirituality of yoga. This sense of purpose, swadharma, which yoga can open up to the person, is so vital for them to find purpose in life, to make life more meaningful. And then they develop the resilience. It is said 9 times down, 10 times up. Be that person who comes up one more time than you have been down. That is the resilience that we want to bring in, adaptive resilience, the capacity to respond. And where does that response come from? This center, the Ajna Chakra. Between the 2 eyebrows, the Bhrumadhya, if you go in, you have the Ajna Bindu, a focal point of consciousness, and the Ajna Chakra. And that is the center which relates to our prefrontal cortex, the neocortex, that is important in metacognitive understanding of our own life. The qualities of discernment, viveka, and the quality of objective metacognition, vairagya, are here. And that is why in so many of our meditative techniques, contemplative techniques, we are concentrating on the midpoint between the eyebrows. We are focusing on the Ajna. Why is it we focus on the Ajna? Because we want to empower that discerning metacognitive intellect of the individual, develop a sense of self-responsibility that is beyond the senses. All the 5 senses are below this. So they are all spinal centers and they are all reactive. You see something, you do something, you smell something, you feel something. But up here, you suddenly have gone onto a new dimension. The Ajna Chakra is where the metacognitive discerning intellect, the buddhi, comes in, which knows what to do, how to do, when to do, and then also does it, because it is the right thing to do. This is the center where we develop a sense of responsibility. And when we help our clients, our patients, look at the life, look at the problems they have, and instead of focusing on the problem, start to focus on a solution, this is the center that opens up. And at this center, suddenly you have that bird's eye view and you see down all your problems and you say, oh my God, what looked like a mountain is now just a molehill and I can see the solution. This is what yoga therapy is about. And through the different practices, when we put ourselves through the different practices, we get to know ourselves better. As we breathe and move, we connect the mind and the body. When we breathe and move with mindfulness, imagine what is happening, the neuroplasticity that is happening in our neuronal connections. All those neurons are pop, 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 opening up like a box of popcorn. And suddenly, we start to become a problem solver rather than a problem creator. This is what yoga therapy has to work when we want to work on that. And this is why, if we want to be a competent yoga therapist, we need to have both intelligence and empathy. Both the higher center and the heart center has to be working together. The head and the heart have to work together. You'll remember I said medicine as an art with a heart. Well, we need to keep that in the yoga therapy. But at the same time, it's not just all the heart. It is also viveka and vairagya. Viveka and vairagya with karuna. Karuna is compassion, it is empathy. We must be willing to share. We need to understand our limitations. We are not God. We don't have an answer to everything. We are not there to cure somebody or even heal them. We are there to help them heal themselves. We are the facilitator. We are the vehicle for the divine universal healing to manifest through that individual. It is said, Ayam me hasto Bhagavan. May our hands be the hands of the divine. Ayam me pado Bhagavan. May our feet be the feet of the divine. May we be that nimitta bhavana. May we have that bhavana attitude that we are a tool helping the other individual. And this is where the power of intent comes in, because the tool is very powerful. Our mind is so powerful, and we need to make sure the intent is of a sattvika nature, that we want to help the person. When somebody comes to us, it's all about what we can give them and help them rather than what we can get out of them for ourselves. This is a very important component, because the interpersonal relationship between therapist and the participant is where healing will manifest. You are not just giving yoga therapy. You are the therapy itself. The therapy comes alive through you. And that is where healing manifests. And we need to keep on working towards enhancing our learning. Not that, oh, I finished my course and I have my 800 hours, 1000 hours, I don't need anything more. No, 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 no. Every moment we need to learn till that last moment. And this is why when you look at the concept of health from the WHO, it is very nice that in recent times, WHO has included the spiritual dimension. And so health as a dynamic sense of well-being at the physical, at the mental, at the social, and at the spiritual levels. Now, how can this sense of dynamic health, swasth, how can that be brought about by the yoga? Well, we have Patanjali's masterful teachings of Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga. And the Yama Niyama, the Yama where we are restraining the subhuman tendencies, and the Niyama where we are enhancing the humane capabilities. Those enable us to develop social health, because we understand ourselves better and we can understand others better. And so the Yama Niyama should be part of our discussion with our clients. How that Yama Niyama comes into them. Because the Vitarka, which is the opposite of the Yama, for example, Ahimsa is non-violent. So Vitarka is Himsa. Satya is a Yama. So Asatya is the Vitarka. These deviants, they are the cause of most of the problems the person is having, be it psychological, physiological, or physical. And by helping them look at the Yama Niyama, what we are doing is we are enhancing the manageability, the meaningfulness, and the purpose of the life. And that is what the sense of coherence is all about. Salutogenesis is all about. Then comes the asana and the pranayama, where we are working with the body, we are working with the breath. We are bringing the breath and the body together. And definitely the physical, physiological systems, they will start to move from a state of allostasis, which is the negative homeostasis when stress is there, to a beautiful sense of homeostatic equilibrium that can be equated with the yogic concept of samatvam. So the asana pranayama, reorienting all the systems, be it your cardiovascular, be it the neuromuscular, what you are doing is reorienting the whole system. Normally we are standing with the head up, heart down, doing practices where the head is below and the heart is up. You reverse the flow of energy. When you reverse the flow of energy, you are giving a chance for normalcy to come. It is like shaking that bottle before use so that it can mix properly. The asanas and the pranayamas are amazing tools for the physical, physiological health, restoring all our autonomic reflexes, making sure that our sympathetic and parasympathetic are in tune with each other. There are times your sympathetic nervous system should be active, and then there are a lot of times your parasympathetic should be active. Knowing when the sympathetic or the parasympathetic should be brought into play. That is what asana and pranayama does. That is the physical sense of well-being. You then have the mental sense of well-being. And the key here is pratyahara and dharana. Because pratyahara is again the Ajna Chakra, where you are overcoming all the 5 lower centers that are the sensory outputs. The senses are always running out in search of nourishment. They want nourishment for themselves. And here you have the Ajna that says, well, let's turn our senses back in. You are becoming the master of the senses. Patanjali calls it Indriya Jaya. Rather than being caught up in the snare, the web of the senses, Indriya Jala. We are all caught up in our sensory web, Indriya Jala. And here you can manifest Indriya Jaya. That is where Pratyahara comes in. You are moving from going out, all pointed is becoming one pointed. And then the mind can start to focus. Dharana, where that mind, which can be equated to the light, it is everywhere. But when you can focus that light into a beam, it has much more power. And when you can focus it into a laser beam, it has amazing power. This is where the mental health comes in. That the scattered Muda and Shipta mind, distracted mind, totally distracted mind, or mind that is so dull, Tamasika, it can be brought into a Vikshipta, which is a slightly more controlled state, becoming Ekagra or one-pointed. Now, the moment you can start to control the senses from above and you start to bring the mind from all pointedness to one-pointedness, mental health is the resultant salutogenic outcome. We then have, of course, dhyana and samadhi for the spiritual well-being, where once you are able to control the senses, withdraw yourself from the senses, once you can focus your mind in a steady one-pointedness, then you can start to move into the higher states of dhyana and that absorption state of samadhi. It's a type of flow. In modern psychology, they talk about flow where you are doing, but there's no you anymore. That is what happens in dhyana and samadhi, is that you are living your life. You are teaching, you are lecturing, you are talking to a worldwide audience through the Global Yoga Therapy Facebook page. And yet, it is not you. You are the vehicle. You are the witness. Sakshi Baba, it is said. A witnessing attitude. And at that point, mental health, spiritual health starts to manifest. So if you look at the Ashtanga of Patanjali, he has given us 8 amazing tools that can help us work towards that 4 dimensions of health that the World Health is giving us. Of course, along with this, we need to understand that, as the IAYT definition says, yoga therapy is the process of empowering the individual. That is where responsibility comes in. To progress towards improved health and well-being, salutogenesis, through the application where you have to do something consciously with intent, the teachings and practices of yoga, which is where all the teachings of Patanjali, of sage Vashishta, of Lord Krishna, of the great masters of this timeless tradition of yoga, they all come into that. And then at that point, it truly becomes yoga therapy. We keep on getting stuck on yogopathy. And this is where we need to take a big leap from our pathogenic orientation to a salutogenic orientation. Because this is what is vital for our wellness. In our wellness, if you look at it, there are 3 systems that come together. The nervous system, the endocrine system, and the immune system. And this is why we talk about psychoneuroimmunology, psychoneuroendocrinology. That the endocrine health, which enables us to be youthful and young, the immune health, which enables us to deal with the world around us, both are dependent on what happens up here. Because if the metacognitive, discerning part of us is not developed, what happens is the instinctive part, survival instinct, the Abhinivesha Klesha, which is the brain stem, that comes into play, and we are constantly reacting to life. We are not being a responsive being, but we are a reactive species. We are totally caught in our reflexes and we are reflexive. But when we start to move up here and we start to take charge up here, that is what yoga is all about. At that point, we reorient the whole functional hierarchy. And at that point, we can start to tell our emotions, do not be so hyperactive, calm down a bit. How can you calm your emotions? Take a deep breath and hold your breath for a count of 10 and let out your breath slow. Immediately your emotional control comes in, because the higher cortex has taken over the subcortical functions, including the brainstem function of the respiration. Instead of letting the brainstem rule your life, you are telling the brainstem how you want your life to be run. You are making your life more manageable. You are making your life more comprehensible, understanding it better. And your life is starting to have a bigger purpose. Salutogenesis comes in when this starts to function. Back down here, it's all pathogenesis. Your emotions come in. He said that, she said that, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. And before you know it, you're caught by your tip of your toenails and dragged down to the bottom of that whirlpool. And you've gone into that deep mess. We have to come out of it. And this is where it can happen. And this is why we need to understand that yoga is not just about doing something. Yoga is about manifesting the best we can be. Yoga is enhancing the individual's physical, physiological, psychological, social, emotional, and spiritual health. And well, when all of that happens, the financial health will also be enhanced. Yoga has 5 very important aspects when we want to use it as a therapy in the salutogenic mode. Achar, Vichar, Ahar, Vihar, and Vyavahar. These 5 are vital for a happy and healthy life. These are salutogenic tools. Achar, what do you eat? How do you eat? When do you eat? Why do you eat? With whom do you eat? Vichar, how do you think? What do you think? Why do you think? What is the background of your thought and what is the result of your thought? Achar, Vichar, Ahar, Vihar. Ahar is food. Achar was how you live. Achar is about how you live, why you live, what you are doing in your life. Ahar is the food component. I got them switched around in my over enthusiastic speech here. So Achar, how you live. Vichar, how you think. Ahar, how you eat, what you eat. Achar, Vichar, Ahar, Vihar. How do you relax? What is your recreation? What is your mode of relaxation? And then last but not least, Vyavahar. What are your relationships? How do you relate to yourself? How do you relate to others? And how do you relate to the cosmos? When these 5 tools are brought into our yoga therapy approach, we are going to have a salutogenic approach that will focus on wellness, health, happiness. And I think this is a very big message, a vital message to have on this Global Yoga Therapy Day, August 14th, 2019, that let us remember that salutogenesis is the key of yoga therapy. Let us move from a pathogenic approach to a salutogenic approach. Let us be the best we can be, and let us enable others to be the best they can be. Thanking you all for this wonderful opportunity. Anne Mary and her team, Yoga Mate, all the yoga therapy associations all over the world who are part of this great worldwide global movement. I thank each and every one of you with my heartfelt gratitude. And I wish that we all be the vehicle of the best of yoga and yoga.